Hello, fellow Brickies. This is Mr. Whiteman here to talk to you about probably what I would say is the most important employability skill, communication. This year, we're placing an extra special emphasis on the types of skills that you're going to need in the workplace someday. So, while these are good skills to practice in school, and we want to see these things from you guys, the plan would be to utilize these things in the workplace, no matter what field you choose, whether it's working with your hands, working in an office somewhere, anything, good communication is really necessary. So, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I made this presentation just to keep me on track. And the first question I want to ask you today, and I'm sure many of you recognize this individual here, is how do you sell paper? I know many of you out there are probably fans of the show The Office. And if you're not familiar, it's a show about a paper company and the salesmen and managers and people who work there. But what's interesting to me is that they sell a product that to me would be hard to sell. Now, by pure coincidence, when this show came out, my whole family about fell out of our chair because just as it happens, my dad is a paper salesman, and he's been doing this ever since I can remember. And when this show came out, we just thought it was so funny that that's what they picked to sell at the company. But it got me thinking because when I watched the characters on the show and how they try to convince people to buy from them, it reminded me of listening to my dad growing up selling paper. He would drive me to school every day, and I got to hear the way that he would talk to customers. I got to hear the way that he would talk to his coworkers, people that worked for him and people who he worked for. And I learned a lot of lessons. And again, going back to my question, how do you sell paper? Well, let's think about paper, like copy paper, that white paper that you put in the copy machine. And there's lots of different companies that sell it. But why would someone buy from you? There's very little difference between the copy paper of one company over another. There's very little difference in price. There might be some difference in price, but negligible, very, very small amount. So the big question, how can one salesperson set themselves apart from another salesperson selling the same product? Well, if you can tell the theme for today, communication is the difference. It truly is the X factor. Again, think about it. It's not like my dad could convince too many people that his paper is just all that much better than anyone else's. It's how he treats people, it's how he talks to people, and it's the relationships that he forms. And even though we're not all going to grow up to be salespeople, that lesson is huge no matter what line of work that you're going to get into. So today I want to do three things. I want to convince you that good communication skills increase your happiness, success, and relationship skills. Nonverbal communication is your first impression every day and every single interaction. And being an effective communicator is simple but takes daily practice. So let's jump into it, and you'll keep seeing your favorite office characters. And as you see them, across the screen, if you happen to watch the show, think about their strengths, their weaknesses when it comes to presenting themselves and communicating. So the first question is, we always like to answer the why. Why do you want to do this? Why are you listening to me right now, other than the fact that you're kind of being forced? But we'll leave that aside. But anyway, why on earth should you care about this? Why should you care about communicating well with others? Well, positive interactions release dopamine in our brains, while negative interactions release adrenaline, okay, what's called that fight or flight response. And when we have a positive interaction with somebody, good communication, again, it makes us happy, puts us in a good mood. Our physical symptoms would be smiling, would be being optimistic about the future, clear-headed, feeling good about the day. When we have a negative interaction with somebody and that adrenaline is released, and that part of our brain that I know you've heard about before called the amygdala is firing. Oh boy, that again, that's that fight or flight response where what are those physical symptoms? Well, like shaking, crying, frowning, looking upset, and again, sweating even sometimes. Okay. So it's very important day to day to maintain good communication just purely because of your health and to make sure that you're in a good mood throughout the day. How about this? Your needs, your wants, opinions, requests, arguments, apologies, thank yous, excuses, Strengths, weaknesses, boundaries, safety, emotions, moods, failures, successes, and more, they're all acknowledged more and respected more with good communication. And again, like I like to, throw myself into the mix here too. It's not like I'm perfect at these things either. The times when I communicate poorly, even if I have a good point, I might have a need that needs to be fulfilled, a want, an opinion, things like that. When I'm communicating poorly, the people around me are less forgiving. They're less interested in what I have to say. They're less inclined to forgive me if I've made a mistake. All these different things that I had listed here, if you communicate well, wow, people are way more willing to listen to you. People are way more willing to give you their time and their attention. And the things that you want done in life, the things that you want in life, you'll get more of it if you just communicate well. Again, and it kind of relates back to the second point here, the third point, you're going to be shown a lot of grace in life if you ask for it in a certain way. We all need grace in this life, okay? And whether it is being late on a bill, whether it's being late to work, needing, forgetting something at work, maybe, not being able to honor a commitment, letting people down sometimes, we're going to have to ask for forgiveness and ask for grace in life. People are much more willing to give it to you, and you'll feel better and feel more forgiven by others if you communicate it in an appropriate way. And good communication skills increase the amount of choice in your life, while poor communication can limit your choices severely. And that's through, so many different instances in life. Okay. You can think of, a job interview is the best thing I can think of right now in terms of, if you communicate well in a job interview, okay, let's just say you look the part, you sound the part, you're going to have so many different offers for your services, for your knowledge, and the things you can do for whomever's hiring you. Contrast that with poor communication during these interviews. You're not going to have as many offers, and you might be stuck taking a job that you don't want, or having a position that might even be like beneath your training, simply because you don't communicate well in the interview. So again, I want you to have as many choices in life as possible, and usually you gain choices with good communication. You lose choices with poor communication. And then the last point, a positive communicator attracts healthy, uplifting relationships, while a poor communicator pushes away relationships, and then even worse, poisons the ones that remain. When we communicate well with our friends, with our significant others, anyone that we have our family members, anyone that we have any kind of relationship with, it usually strengthens those relationships. It draws the people closer. It makes the people experience more trust with one another. When you have poor communication skills with others, particularly people that you want to like you, it's going to do two things. It's going to drive them away, maybe to the point where they're not going to communicate with you anymore, or it's going to make them feel scared to interact with you, okay? Or not comfortable interacting with you because you communicate poorly and you make that person upset, okay? Both are really not good for your mental health and well-being when you don't have those strong relationships with others, and you can't have it without good communication. So those are just 5 real quick points about why we want to do this in life. And yes, it has to do with work, but more importantly, I want you to be happy in life. And those that utilize these skills generally are happier. And those that don't, I feel like they're angry all the time or not satisfied by life. Okay, so let's move on to the second part of today, the nonverbal communication, the things that we communicate without even opening our mouths yet. Now look at this list here: your appearance, your posture, dress, facial expression, eye contact, other forms of nonverbal communication. I view it as equally as important as to whatever you happen to be saying. You might be brilliant. You might have all your facts straight. You might be really talented at your job and what you're doing. But if those nonverbal communication indicators are poor, and you don't present yourself very well, it's very tough for people to listen to what you have to say about anything. And again, this is in any job that you can think of. I don't care what you're doing, whether you're on a construction site, okay, and your body language And the way that you're presenting yourself is negative, and it's distracting to the coworkers around you. It's not helpful to them. It doesn't make you a productive worker. And it's the same in an office building where, again, you're slumped over in your chair, you look upset, you don't communicate with anybody. It's equally as damaging no matter what field you choose. So what needs to happen is your nonverbals and your verbals need to match up with one another. They need to work in tandem together. And if the nonverbals are not matching up with the great things that you might have to communicate, it really doesn't matter. In a word, this is your attitude, the way you're presenting yourself and the way you're coming across. It needs to be appropriate for the workplace despite the challenge of dealing with stress, hard work, and long hours. Now, listen, nobody is saying that when you're in the privacy of your own home and you're away from work, that sure, of course, you can let your guard down. That's the time to vent to family members, to friends, whomever it might be. That's the time where you don't have to worry about how you necessarily present yourself. That's totally appropriate in that scenario. But when you're at work, there are expectations with how you're supposed to look and act. And again, you can't possibly be successful in what you do if your nonverbals don't communicate that day in, day out. And especially if every day your nonverbals are negative and they clearly reflect that you don't want to be there, don't care about what you're doing, upset, angry. My goodness, again, that drives people away, and that's not the right attitude for a workplace. Okay. Nobody likes working with someone like that. I hate to break it to you. Okay. People like working with the opposite, someone with a positive attitude. Okay. A positive demeanor in the workplace. Someone who dresses appropriately stands and sits up straight, smiles, looks people in the eye, and is in control of their emotions, looks focused in meetings, not on their phone the whole time, looking disinterested. All these nonverbals, this is going to create more success for you. And even if the guy next to you or the woman next to you is more talented than you, seriously, maybe they're smarter than you, maybe they got better grades in college, they have a higher degree, whatever it might be, I'm telling you that if you do these little nonverbals correctly, you're going to have more influence in your job and more success in your job than maybe they do. Because if they can't present themselves well, their talent, it's not going to be seen as clearly. Okay, it's going to be very covered by their nonverbals. Okay, very distracting. So let's go to the second area here, or I should say the last area. How do we bring this all together? I gave you the why. I gave you the nonverbal things that we need to do. How do we bring this all together to communicate well with others? Well, once you've already made that first impression with your nonverbal communication, don't forget it is the first impression. There are still things to consider before you even open your mouth. Okay. We haven't even got into the words that you're using yet. And look at how many things matter besides just what words that you're actually saying. How about this? A bad tone is like bad breath. It's very distracting. Have you ever talked to someone that has bad breath up close? I can't hear them too well. Can you? It's very distracting. And if you have a bad tone, I think it has that effect. It's very difficult to even hear what you're saying. How about your volume and rate of speech? Both are either going to be inviting, okay, where the person wants to listen to you, or they're going to be repelling, okay, particularly the volume. If you're upset and you're raising your voice, it's going to drive people away. The language that you use should match your environment and the expectations of those around you. I know that here in school, you're well aware that in our handbook, we have certain ways of talking that we purely just don't allow. Okay. And the rules that we give you here at school, the point of it, the language rules that we use is to mimic what's going to be expected in the workplace. So again, on your private time and your private home, well, I guess that's your business. Okay. I guess you can talk the way you want to, but in the workplace, a certain type of language is expected. And again, people won't take you seriously if you're using anything but. It's difficult to work with someone who doesn't tell the truth. You could do that once or twice to people where you either exaggerate, or it might be gossip or rumor, or work related where you flat out just lie, don't tell the truth. I mean, you do that 2-3 times to somebody and it's going to be very difficult to work with you. Trust is huge in the workplace. And if you're not communicating the truth, I wouldn't speak at all. Okay. The frequency of your communication should leave your coworkers and bosses feeling connected, but you still got to be respectful of everyone's time. Okay, there is such a thing as over communicating, where you're pestering your boss, you're pestering your coworkers with too much of it. Okay, maybe too much side talk, wanting too much of their attention, maybe too much, talk at their desk when they're wanting to get to work. Maybe it's rarely brought up that you should also respect someone's time with communication. But of course, the obvious point is that if you're not communicating, or it's too far in between, they're going to feel in the dark. Okay. And they're going to feel like they might not know what you're working on, what you're doing with your time. You'd rather, again, your bosses and coworkers to know that, you're connected with them, you're on pace, maybe you're on budget. Okay. Something like that. And then again, the last point, are you on time? I think the act of just arriving on time speaks maybe, a lot more volume than, again, what you might end up saying. If you're 15, 20, 30 minutes late for a meeting, if you're late for a job interview, at that point, the other person's mind might be made up at that point. Okay. So again, I promise we're getting to what you say, and this is the slide for it, but look at all that we just talked about that had nothing to do even with what you're saying. Okay. Now let's get to the meat of this. Workplace communication usually answers the following questions: the who, the what, the where, the why, and the how questions in work. If you're emailing somebody, if you're on the phone with them, if you're in a Zoom meeting, whatever, face to face, whatever it might be, before you leave or put the other person to their task or get to work on your own task, you should probably have those questions answered before you get to work. So a big part of communication in the workplace is answering those questions. When communication involves requests, like you're asking something of somebody, you're asking for a favor, you're asking something done for you, you need to really clearly communicate that it's a need. Okay. People are much less willing to meet your requests if they don't see a need for it. When you're communicating these requests, what you need to do is show a need for it, where the other person clearly understands and sees the reason why you need to have that request made. Okay. And then don't forget, the other person usually has a choice of whether or not to fulfill all or part of your request. If you're nice about it, if you communicate effectively with the other person, okay, and use the skills that we talked about, you might not get all of what you want, but you'll get some of what you want, okay, if they can. And if they can't do anything to you, they'll probably apologize and look for the next time where they could go above and beyond for you. The words you use when you're angry or upset, first off, I always like to point out, the angrier you are, the dumber you are. I don't know if you know that. And that's science, by the way. Your IQ goes down the angrier and more upset that you are. So while you're in that state, while that amygdala is firing, I would probably take a break. Okay. I would give it some time. And again, because check this out, when you're in that state, you're going to be rude. You're going to exaggerate the problem. You're going to be problem focused rather than solution focused. You're not going to be helpful. You're going to be accusatory. You're going to be defensive. You're going to put yourself in a position where even if you're right about something that you're upset about, your reaction might overshadow whatever point you're trying to make. And we could really quickly bring this into the classroom. When you're upset with a teacher or you have something to talk about with them, your approach means everything. Okay. When you're too upset and angry and you lash out at the teacher, makes it very difficult for them to help you. On the other hand, if you give it time and you think about it, maybe give it a night's sleep and then communicate maybe through an email rather than in person, so you can, organize your thoughts and choose your words carefully, you might end up having the teacher apologize to you. So that's how important this is. And again, eventually in the workplace, I want those same skills to apply. And then the last point here, be quick to ask questions, give praise, offer and receive help, and always express optimism. It's very easy to be negative. If negativity in the workplace were like currency, we'd all be very rich at this point, okay, because there's lots of it. It's very rare to always be optimistic and positive. In fact, sometimes in the workplace, these people are looked down on because it is that rare. Okay. But usually that person is a hard worker, and anyone that works around them sees that, and they end up being uplifted too, and they end up being better workers. A negative worker, as we all know, just drags people down around them. Okay. All right, so let's do a couple examples here, and this ties into the assignment that you might be doing a little bit later. Let's take a look at some poor communication. This is an email I've seen all too often from a student to a teacher. Hi, Mr. Zolads. Look at the way Mr. Zolads is spelled and the way it's not capitalized. This is Johnny. Johnny who? I didn't turn in the work on Monday. Monday's not capitalized. Can I turn no period, no comma? Can I turn it in tomorrow? I know it's Friday. The wrong it's. But you let people turn it in on Wednesday. Oh, so now you're attacking the teacher. That's great. I know you can tell I'm being sarcastic. I don't know if this teacher is going to want to meet your request. I don't know if the way that it was asked here is really all that effective. And I don't know if it's going to be treated with the care and concern that you want. Let's contrast it with a good example of an email. Dear Mr. Zolads, look, it starts with a greeting, comma. Sorry to we're indenting here. Sorry to email you so late, but I have a problem. Look what you're saying. You're saying that the problem is yours and you're looking for help. I had volleyball practice late last night and didn't plan my time well. Look, again, you're owning up to the situation. I did not complete the study guide and now I don't have time. I know it'd be a big favor to me, but can I have an extension to complete the assignment? Again, you're acknowledging that this is a favor to you and you're asking for grace. I want it to be my best work and I can't do that tonight. I promise not to make a habit of it. Either way, thanks for reading and have a good night. Look, you're saying even if you don't honor this request, I appreciate you even responding to me. Thanks. Okay, a salutation. Johnny Student. Oh, that Johnny Student's a good writer. So, at the end here, I need you to practice every day. Maybe the most important thing I have to say is right at the end here, though. People are going to make mistakes and you're going to make mistakes. If someone does not communicate well with you, I need you to practice forgiveness. Okay. I need you to not make that the be all end all of who the person is. People deal with things that we can't possibly imagine. And some days you're going to catch them on an off day. And if they offend you, again, just like we learned earlier, I would give it time, sleep on it. It's absolutely appropriate to let the other person know that they let you down. But again, we need to practice forgiveness of one another, okay? Because we're going to make mistakes. And while we do that, we need to practice forgiveness so that we can be happy, okay? I hope you enjoyed this. I tried not to keep it too long. Again, these are employability skills, things you're going to use in the workplace today. And today was communication. I'm Mr. Whiteman, and I hope you have a very good day.